Hartman and Yandy? Hartman and Yandy, attorney at law. The structure has a bit of an interesting past. So this at one point was the office of the Gettysburg compiler, which was the quote-unquote voice of the Democratic Party here in the town of Gettysburg. This was the business of publisher Henry Stahl. During the battle here in July of 1863, a Confederate surgeon was persuaded by Stahl to come in to tend to a wounded Union officer. This is considered a life-saving leg amputation, but the townspeople turned Stahl in and had him temporarily incarcerated at Fort McHenry in Baltimore for aiding the capture of a Union officer. The breech of the cannon Penelope is seen protruding from the pavement nearby. So over here in the corner, or at least according to the sign, this is the breech of a cannon called Penelope. It was traditionally fired on the streets of Gettysburg to celebrate whenever a Democrat won an election here at the Gettysburg compiler offices. It was abruptly silenced in 1855 when an overcharge of powder ruptured her barrel. Fittingly, the old political cannon was memorialized in front of the voice of the Democratic Party. So I'm unsure if this is the original Presbyterian church or if they've just merely extended. Nevertheless, on this site is the Presbyterian Church of Gettysburg. There was a church at least similar to this here during the battle in 1863. During the battle, this church was converted into the field hospitals of the Cavalry Corps. Particularly the 1st Division Cavalry Corps were located here on June 30th in this church. At this time, on June 30th, I don't think either side were expecting how big the battle was going to become. By July 1st, the wounded of the Cavalry Command were later cared for here in the immediate vicinity. It was taken under the care of a Surgeon George L. Paincos, U.S. Volunteers 1st Division Surgeon Abram Harn, 8th Illinois Cavalry 2nd Division, Surgeon W.W.L. Phillips, 1st New Jersey Division. 3rd Division, Surgeon Henry Cape Hart, 1st West Virginia Cavalry, medical officer in charge of the hospital corps, Surgeon W.H. Willison, 9th New York Cavalry. What's really unique is there's 2 plaques here on the corner I want you to see. About 2 presidents that actually had service here in this church, or at least on this grounds of the church. The first, President Lincoln, on November 19th, 1863, the same day he delivered the Gettysburg Address, just a few hundred yards down the street. Apparently it says too, the pew he sat in is actually in the sanctuary, but can't go in. But fast forward 100 years, and President Eisenhower is a member of this church from 1961, very shortly after he left office, to March of 1969. And the pew he is occupied is also within the church, so it's pretty cool. Right along Baltimore Street is this cool historic structure. Now, this was here during the battle, but what's really cool is what's inside now. That is now the Gettysburg Museum of History. A little bit famous. It's been on TV before, such as American Pickers, and more recently, History Underground has made it quite famous. We were just visiting there a little bit earlier today, and if you're ever in the area, I cannot say highly how much you should check that place out. It's actually free admission, at least at the time of recording. The stuff they have in there is you're not going to see it anywhere else in the country.
By far, one of the best private collections of World War I and World War II relics that I've seen in a very long time. I mean, some of the trench art, battlefield dug items in there, all that stuff's right up my alley if you've seen my channel. And it's just incredible. My jaw was on the floor multiple times, as I'm sure the readout will tell you. But yeah, definitely worth stopping in, 100%.
Oh, and do you know whose house you're walking past?
Oh, the Wade House.
Yeah.
Well, Jenny Wade's birthplace house.
Yeah, so this is actually the birthplace of Mary Virginia Wade, the only known casualty of the Battle of Gettysburg. Born here May 21st, 1843. Second of 6 children of the James and Mary Philby Wade family. Spent her childhood here, attended local schools, helping with her father's tailor shop, but the family moved in 1854 to Breckenridge Street. During the battle, well, you know the story. Now we've come over the dip here, the top of the hill on Baltimore Street, coming down towards Cemetery Hill. If you look up toward this house, you're gonna notice there is looks like there's an artillery shell rammed inside the wall. Now, it should be noted that the building's had considerable work done since the battle. The shell was not lodged in there for 160 years consistently. It's been moved out and moved in, but this house was struck with an artillery piece during the Battle of Gettysburg. So right here along Breckenridge Street, during the battle, the Confederates set up a barricade. Breckenridge Street comes right out here. That structure is now the home of Ghosts of Gettysburg. So the barricade would have roughly ran across right here, and that would have allowed the Confederates to be shooting down the street and up towards Cemetery Hill. Keep in mind, many of these homes were not standing here during the battle. So particularly here on the left side of the street, you had a pretty clear vista up toward the heights where the Union were entrenched. So throughout the night of July 1st till the end of the battle on July 3rd, there was constant skirmishing between the two lines here. And just downwind of that barricade is the Shriver house. This was the home of the Shriver family at the time of the battle. George Shriver, the husband in the family, he was off fighting in the war. His wife, 2 children, and the neighbor's daughter actually had to flee the house and locate south of town. They thought they'd be safe. Well, unfortunately, where they'd seek shelter was right between the Union Confederate lines at the base of Little Round Top. The Confederates actually used this house as a sharpshooter's position. The home next to it, none of this, that was not standing here during the battle. So they would again been able to snipe down towards Cemetery Hill. If you want to learn more about the Shriver story, we actually have a video on Redoubt Productions about it. Now we're a little bit downwind of where this would have used to be, but this is the bell from what is known as the High Street School. High Street is through those buildings up on top of the hill there. It's called High Street for a reason, folks. Anyways, well, the story is that this bell was in the tower of the building dated 1857. So it was there during the battle, and within that bell tower, there was actually a Union soldier that had managed to crawl his way up into the bell tower and to seek refuge from being captured by Confederates who were using the hospital down below in the schoolrooms. Pretty neat thing. I never knew about this one being here. Walked past it many times.
And of course, coming up Baltimore Street is the famed Jenny Wade house, actually the house of her sister's family. But, well, we're going to save Jenny Wade's story for another video.
So we're actually walking on the, I would say, on the eastern side of Cemetery Hill right now. We're walking right along Wainwright Avenue, and probably something I shouldn't be doing because cars do use this very narrow road, although I believe all cars have to come our direction. We're just killing some time this morning and never really walked to actually look up close to these monuments. And actually, if you come right over here, we got one of the 7th West Virginia Infantry. There's another marker back up on top of the hill for the 7th West Virginia, and it says end of charge on July 2nd. Now I'm going to be pretty honest, I don't know too much about this side of Cemetery Hill, so I'm going to have to go do a little more research. So what I do know is that some of the hottest fighting here at Gettysburg actually occurred right on this slope. Unfortunately, some of the battlefield is not preserved. That is the modern school for Gettysburg with the football stadium. So these trees, none of that would have been there in 1863. We had a perfect view back to town, which explains why the attack was made this direction. I'll make a long story short. What has happened on the night of July 2nd is Confederate soldiers, particularly under Jubal Early's division, are marching from the southern end of town, kind of sweeping in this direction and assaulting East Cemetery Hill, assaulting the apex of the fishhook line that the Union have here. Again, keep in mind, the Union right flank is on Culp's Hill, flows the ridge onto Cemetery Hill, and then it goes down Cemetery Ridge down to the Round Tops. So just to give you an idea how hotly the contest looks, how close these regiments were together. I mean, they're flank and flank. They're tied right into each other. Down over there, we were looking at the 75th Ohio and the 25th Ohio, and their units basically form a right angle. There's some flank markers back in the woods.
Okay. left flank of the 75th Ohio Volunteer Infantry. So, right up against each other on this stone wall here.
You're a trooper.
You know what, there's probably not poison ivy back here. So if there is, I'm gonna die. Which is gonna be fun.
Now, if you're looking more toward the southeast, you get almost a perfect vantage of what this would have looked like here in 1863. There's the wooded Culp's Hill, which we learned back in April is actually 2 hills. Yeah, we had the mistake of, oh, we're gonna climb up Culp's Hill, and yeah, that was it was fun, not for our legs, but it was fun for our hearts and our brains. That gives you a very good view of the wooded hillside that the Union right flank would have been trying to hold, and various Confederate forces were attacking. And like I said, the line would kind of wrap around here on the east side of Cemetery Hill, but this gives you a pretty good vantage of what the soldiers would have saw here 160 years ago. So something to point out, what's unique is we're doing a video on Barlow's Knoll about the Barlow-Gordon story. So we talk a lot about the 11th Corps, and the 11th Corps, I've probably said one too many times in these videos, it gets a bad rap for being the Flying Dutchman. But something to take it hard is a lot of the 11th Corps regiments, several of them have multiple markers on the battlefield. They fought the first day north of town, then had to retreat through town, fighting street to street. And then on July 2nd would have been entrenched right up here at Cemetery Hill. For example, that's the 17th Connecticut Monument. They got a monument up at Barlow's Knoll as well. And a lot of these monuments were of equal stature. So for regiments from a corps that is considered, tends to get a lot of flack, they definitely made sure to have multiple prominent monuments